Hey, what's up guys? Little man with a big opinion here. In today's video, I'm going to talk about prepping and is it political. I've got a list of different things that, you know, different groups would make the argument should be legal, should be not illegal, should be regulated, should be free game. And, you know, let's just hop into it. I'll give you my take on it. But generally speaking, in a lot of ways, if you want to be an all out prepper, your end goal is to be self sufficient, self reliant. You're in charge of the safety and security of yourself and your family. Then, at least at that level, you're pretty libertarian. And that means certain things that the left does and certain things that the right does, you shouldn't align with. The very first one, and it's going to be the hottest debated one for this whole argument, and that is firearms. Quite simply put, I think they made it very clear in the Constitution. So I think the National Firearm Act is unconstitutional. I think every gun law is unconstitutional. That being said, I can understand, wanting to require courses. Me personally, I would just have some sort of way for it to be incentivized and highly encouraged. Typically, with a cheaper price on a firearm, I think that would work out just fine. That being said, because as a prepper, when I purchase tools, like my little fancy lighter here, I want to be able to use them and, be a master with them. That being said, I mostly use this for, burning the end of paracord and starting fires. It's not that simple to be proficient with that tool. But with the firearm, I think there are, if you don't make it a requirement to take training before you get it, when you get it as a prepper, having training to better be able to use that tool, I think it's better. I've said it in the past. I think someone that has a $500 AR and has spent $1,500 in training is better than someone with a $2,000 AR with no training. So that's my take on it. What are your thoughts on that? Some of the other arguments I've heard preppers say is, I just use bows and crossbows. I've heard preppers from other countries talk about how they prep, and they've got these big, awesome knife collections, and they've got bows and spears and swords, and they do a lot more martial arts kind of stuff, taekwondo. And I'm a small guy. I'm 5'3". I would say that I'm at least in, mediocre athletic shape. I can run a couple miles in a decent time. I can do push-ups, pull-ups, squat, that sort of thing. Even if I was in my peak physical fitness, a bigger person is still an issue for me. And it's an issue for a lot of women. Smaller people, women, they can bulk up and work out all they want, and just physical size wise, it's a lot difficult for them to get up to that level. And I think a firearm for small people like myself is a fantastic equalizer. That being said, I also think a knife at least ups my advantages, but I have to get up close and personal. Same thing with a bow. It equalizes to a certain extent, But technology wise, firearm, more simple tool for hunting and security. So that's my take on that one. Most of the rest of this stuff is more just self reliance type issues, water or rain harvesting, permits for animals, gardens, and public eye appeal, and then just being able to do whatever you want on your property. So, the rain harvesting, there's only two states that straight up you can't do it, Colorado and Utah. A lot of other states don't want you to do it without a permit for landscaping purposes. They're perfectly fine with you collecting it for drinking. But would a garden fall into landscaping because it's a vegetable or it's vegetation out on your property? I don't know. I didn't look that deep, but that was one of the questions I had pop up. But a big part of self reliance is either having the rain catchment system and the storage in place to keep you going, or having a well slash storage in place, or both, or having the open water source that you pull out buckets in the morning and, however you get your water, as long as you got it. But living in one of those two states, even if you've accomplished all your other prepping goals, I think water, is at least in the top five. I mean, you gotta have it every day. Dehydration is a pretty big issue. So, if Prepper A does everything in Utah that Prepper B does in Wyoming, they have the same budget, they buy their stuff in the same order. At some point, Wyoming Prepper B is going to have the better advantage of survival because he has a rain catchment system. That being said, I don't know if these states have laws for putting in wells, but what I can tell you is the reason why Utah has that law in place is because they want more of their water to go into their aquifers and their water reserves. So there's that for you. So having regulations on what you can and can't do with what falls onto your property, it's another libertarian idea. Colorado is a blue state, Utah is a red state, so gives you a reason to hate both of them. Permits for animals. Almost every city you live in, you have to have some sort of permit to have, most of them are pretty okay with chickens and rabbits, but you got to get permits. And if anyone complains about the smell or the noise, boom, gone. It's on your property, but you're causing an inconvenience for them. Another incentive to, move out of a city. And then you typically have to have building permits for putting up their structures. And like I said, if you get complaints, then all of that time and money you put into creating a food source goes down the drain because they make you get rid of it. And if you don't get rid of it, they typically confiscate it, charge you more money, probably charge you with breaking the law in some form or fashion. And then they typically just euthanize the animals and trash them. Gardens and public eye appeal. So, even in the tiny city that I live in, you have to have a presentable yard. And so, if you put in a garden and say you have a compost pile next to it, someone might say, that's not presentable. It's got to go. But that compost is what's allowing you to yield more crops out of that. What if someone, again, it's up to the opinion of someone else, and then the city confirms it. But in a lot of cases, you lose those battles. And same can be said for the last one I talked about with the animals. if someone else complains about something going on your property, then you're in trouble. So a lot of these prepping things that I wrote down and talked about, they typically lean towards the side of less government. Almost every time I do a video, I get phone calls that I need to answer. And then the very last one I wrote, just being able to do whatever you want on your property. There are certain municipalities that tell you how high your fence can be. Uh, you know, in the town that my parents live in, they're like, the fence has to be able to hold in your animals. My dad put up an 8-foot pine, nice and dark, privacy fence. And, you know, I plan on doing something similar to that. The place that I live, you know, they kind of just say the same thing. It just has to look presentable. But in certain areas, you know, your fence has to be between 4 and 5.5 feet. No taller, no shorter. In certain areas, they tell you the color or the type of wood, or if you can put up a fence. Uh, you know, some people want to put in a fence in their front yard so they can put their dogs in there. Nope, they got to stay in the backyard. Some people want to put a fence in just for that little bit of extra security. It's a deterrent, albeit not, you know, a brick wall, 10-foot high deterrent, but it requires extra effort. It's an extra layer of defense. And, you know, at whether it's city or county or state levels, there's just laws telling you what you can and can't do. So as a prepper, you want to be self-reliant. You know, without me knowing any of your other political beliefs, I'd probably say you're libertarian or independent, which they say a good portion of the U.S. population is independent. So, as a prepper, where do you stand? You know, what are your limits, and you know, what can you do if prepping things get political? You migrate to a more appealing state. You know, as much as I enjoy the state of Texas, when it comes to prepping, I would much rather be in Oklahoma. Uh, and, you know, probably even Wyoming, not Utah, but, you know, those north Midwestern states, pretty good prepping states. You know, Alaska, I think they've got the most lax laws when it comes to me wanting to be a prepper. But I probably won't leave Texas. Uh, I'll stand my political ground here and try to make things better for me prepping wise. Uh, but like I said, I wrote down a little list for you in this video. In the comments down below, what are some other laws in your area that could affect you as a prepper? Doesn't matter if they're left or right leaning laws, just, you know, do you have other things that governments have made it more of an inconvenience, a hassle, or illegal to do that would make, you know, your prepping goals more attainable if you had what they were denying or putting behind a paywall or a permission wall? That would make your prepping easier. Let me know in the comment section down below. And with that, like the video if you enjoyed our conversation. And if you enjoy what I'm doing with my channel, then subscribe. Once the subscribe goes from red to gray, then hit the little bell, because you never know what time of the day I will release my videos. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.